Before we get started, I want to remind everyone that the information in this presentation is not to be or construed as investment advice. The information presented are subject to change without notice, and while we have made every reasonable effort to ensure that the content is reliable and accurate, we have not independently verified the content and are not responsible for errors therein. Please consult a professional advisor before putting a loonie in any of these financial markets.
Hi everyone, my name is Richard Diaz and welcome back to the IceCap Canadian Market Wrap. In this week's video, we are going to expand on the food inflation theme of last week, the cost of living crisis, the government's short-sighted attempt to fix it, and what it might mean for the dollar and why. As ever, this centers around productivity growth, and we'll also touch on why we might be wrong about our concerns for much higher inflation going forward. So last week, we talked about rising inflation. Some core measures are back to the top of the Bank of Canada's target range of 2% plus or minus 1%. However, there are some core measures that are falling, but we'll set that aside for now. Outside the general trend of higher inflation, the key message from the release was the unwind of the GST HST break from last year to combat the now infamous gaslighting of Canada's vibe sessions right before the federal election was about to take place. However, as with most gimmicks, their effects are short-lived, and you can see that in the difference between the light blue and the dark blue bars at the top and bottom of the chart. Food inflation, now back up to 6.2%, is becoming a real issue for Canadians and typifying the broader problem, which is that of a cost of living crisis and general malaise. This is made clear with a chart from the latest Canadian survey of consumer expectations and highlights that expectations remain at post-COVID lows. Now, of course, part of this recent decline is due to the trade war. There's no doubt about that. There are heightened concerns about missing debt payments that appear to be tied to consumers' perceptions of a higher risk of losing their job. However, with the labor market relatively stable and business sentiment recovering, see the Services PMI, the CFIB Small Businesses Index, it is worth focusing on inflation and interest rate expectations, the yellow and green bars in the chart before you. The latter is due to what will be the biggest mortgage renewal wave in decades, as households that borrowed at super low rates will be confronted with much higher ones. And this is something we will have to touch on in the coming months. Today, our focus is on inflation, or the cost of living crisis, and that is corroborated by the following chart. Concerns about high prices continue to negatively affect consumer spending. Make no mistake about it. People are feeling the pinch, and although the indicator has come down somewhat in recent months, it is higher than it was before the U.S. protectionism and antagonism of Canada. The story here is that everything in Canada is more and more expensive, and incomes are simply failing to keep pace. Cue another gimmick. The Canada Groceries and Essential Benefits Boost, a GST credit. A one-time top-up of $400 for singles, $500 or so for couples, and $800 for families of four this year, plus a 25% higher quarterly payment starting July 2026 for 5 years. Ostensibly, this money will help over 12 million low and modest income Canadians paying out in the spring, perhaps very conveniently timed with another general election. This program will cost $12 billion over the next 6 years, and Prime Minister Mark Carney called it immediate relief amid projections of $17,000 plus annual grocery costs for a family of four. The headline is great, of course. Who doesn't want free money? But certain income levels are not entitled to receive the existing GST credit at all. For example, single individual who makes more than $56,000 in 2024 will not be eligible to receive it. This rebate will be meaningful for some very poor people, but for others, it is simply an empty gesture. And in effect, it also punishes those who are young and working and pay high taxes and otherwise have no other deductions. Furthermore, because income distributions are very positively skewed, that is to say, a fat wedge to the left and a long, thin tail to the right, there are millions of middle-income families just scraping by that get nothing from this political stunt. Furthermore, it's not targeted. Cash payments like this are seldom used as intended. The other wrinkle worth noting is that it wasn't in the budget. Make that of what you will. They obviously knew they were going to introduce something like this, and they didn't include it in their budget. Nevertheless, what we're seeing is that these rosy projections are very much unlikely to come to fruition. For those keeping track at home, this is not the first such program we have seen. In 2023, the government announced the grocery rebate program to help 11 million Canadians afford food. Late 2025 was another such scheme, a temporary reprieve from the GST and HST, which added to the deficit and has had no lasting impact on affordability of anything. And of course, the most recent attempt to help with the rising cost of living. But as ever, this is a continued misunderstanding of the broader problem, and therefore it simply will not work. For regular viewers, you know what's coming next. The real issue is a lack of productivity growth. But don't take my word for it. That is literally what Nicholas Vincent of the Bank of Canada said in a speech just a couple of months ago. Quote, Canada's affordability problem is really a productivity problem. To make things more affordable, we need to raise our income, and the way to grow our income is by increasing productivity, end quote. We've talked at length about Canada suffering a productivity emergency and that most of the GDP growth of the last 10 years has been quote unquote fake. But to really hammer this point home is the following chart. The 10-year compound annual growth rate of GDP and the two factors that make it up, population growth and productivity growth. And as you can clearly see, there's been a shift in the driver of that headline GDP figure in blue. The totality of economic output is the number of people multiplied by individual output or productivity. An economy can grow even when productivity is negative if population growth jumps to replace it. And that is exactly what we've seen over the last few years. However, now productivity continues to languish. And that means an economy isn't producing more goods and services for the same amount of work. So if demand rises, say from massive government borrowing, businesses face higher costs but don't get more output to offset them. So they raise prices instead. In short, without productivity gains, higher costs turn into higher inflation rather than more growth. Why does Canada have such poor productivity growth? Mainly it is because of capital shallowing. Private capital investment per person in Canada has collapsed. Canada is hampered by overregulation, high taxes, and businesses are clearly loath to invest their money here when their capital is treated much more favorably elsewhere. CAPEX, investment in machines, tools, technology, and infrastructure, is important for labor productivity because it gives workers better equipment to do their jobs faster and more efficiently. When companies invest in new technology, each worker can produce more output with the same amount of time and energy, and without enough CAPEX, workers rely on outdated tools and productivity growth. How does Canada compare with the rest of the world? Well, I've showed you the US. Here's another indictment on our CAPEX per worker. In this chart, we compare CAPEX relative to GDP. And again, you can see that Canada is languishing. With the inability to pivot and the ongoing misdiagnosis from our government, what do we see is the likely path forward for inflation? Well, as I've said before, you have to take any forward-looking indicators with a grain of salt, but the IceCap inflation model continues to suggest that inflation will continue to grind higher. So now that I've shared with you what our base case is for inflation and for Canada over the next few months, what if we're wrong? What if the worst is over? And this is the chart that I had to share just because it really pokes a hole in our overall view of inflation going forward. And this is the rate of change of the Canadian dollar and import prices. Now, Canada more broadly exports oil and uses that money to import consumer goods, largely from the US. And if our currency strengthens, as this chart is showing, e.g. the blue line falling, notice that the Y scale is inverted. It suggests that the import prices naturally are going to fall as well, and that will put downward pressure on inflation. So this is something we're really keeping an eye on and may prove to be the deciding factor in our view of inflation going forward. But as you can see, none of these charts are perfect, and you can get dislocations that last for many years. All right, so that's it for now. Please like, subscribe, and follow for more. As always, we manage money for families all across Canada and the world, so please feel free to get in touch.